We're starting this evening with, oh my gosh, where did I lose my page at? I wanted to, with Dr. Kristina Kintzinger. She is an epidemiologist with over 10 years of combined experience in public health practice and academia. Her research interests include environmental health, disaster epidemiology, impacts of climate change on human health, and health disparities. Dr. Kintzinger currently serves as the Claire M. Hubbard Professor of Health and Environment with the Water, Climate, and Health Program at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. And there you go. Thank you.
Thank you. I just need to get the AV person to switch. Yes, to the presentation. Sorry, it is a hazard of my job that I come with PowerPoints, but I really feel like what I'm going to be talking about is just better understood with visual aids. So showing you maps and things like that. But oh, there's my kids. Thank you. Okay, there we go. Okay, so tonight we are going to be watching this amazing documentary, and I am so thankful that the planning committee asked me to come back and be involved again this year with the summit. And so tonight I'm basically going to be putting this linkage between water and human health into the local context. So we're going to hear about the linkages between water and health around the country, and some of the ways that it has negatively impacted our communities. And so I'm just going to talk about the local context. So we all know how vital water is for our existence, but contaminated water can lead to illness and injury. And so I'm going to share how both water quality and water quantity can impact our health and well-being. So first of all, we're going to talk about water quality and its impacts on human health. So in Nebraska and throughout the Midwest, we have a number of water quality issues that we need to be aware of, including nitrate, atrazine, and uranium contamination. Water contamination comes from both naturally occurring sources, like things like uranium, selenium, and arsenic, but also from human practices, things such as agricultural production. And this map here shows the distribution of nitrate and uranium contamination across the country. And as you can see, there are large concentrations where there is overlap throughout the central part of this country, specifically here in Nebraska. There's a lot of that. So there's this interesting relationship between the two contaminants. Through a series of bacterial and chemical reactions, nitrate can actually oxidize uranium, making it water soluble. So that means that it leaches from the ground into our groundwater. And research has suggested that prolonged drinking of uranium contaminated water can lead to kidney damage, elevated blood pressure, and various cancers. And we're going to hear a lot more about that in the documentary. Here's a distribution of nitrate contamination in Nebraska. So there are high concentrations of nitrate in drinking water, or that's above the maximum contaminant level of 10 micrograms per liter, are shown in the purple, maroon, and orange colors on the map. And you can see there are definite places in this state where there are high concentrations that are of concern. And we know that adverse health outcomes are linked with nitrate contamination, and these include things like methemoglobinemia, or blue baby syndrome, birth defects and miscarriage, thyroid dysfunction, and various cancers such as gastric, colorectal, lymphoma, bladder, kidney, and pediatric brain tumors. So our regulatory limits of nitrate in drinking water are set based on the infant development of blue baby syndrome and not any of the other health outcomes. But there have been research studies that have shown links between nitrate contamination and these other health outcomes at levels lower than this limit. So cancer is the leading cause of death by disease among children in the United States. early life exposure to environmental contaminants is thought to be one of the main risk factors for pediatric cancer. Nebraska had the 7th highest incidence of pediatric cancer in the United States and is the 2nd in the US in incidence of pediatric malignant brain tumors. So for a small, largely rural population, we have some large problems with pediatric cancer. Here you can see how the childhood cancer incidence rates break down by county across the state. So the areas that are in the darker colors on the right show the age-adjusted incidence of pediatric brain and other central nervous system cancers. And relative to the overall U.S. rates of cancer, there are 63% of Nebraska counties that are above that national average. And these areas that have these higher rates of pediatric cancers are also the areas that have higher concentrations of nitrate and atrazine concentration. And nitrate exposure is also linked to birth defects. So you can see here the way that the rates of birth defects are distributed across the state. So the national average, 3.3% of all live births have a birth defect. And in Nebraska, the average is 5.8. And in some counties in certain parts of Nebraska reach as high as 12%. And again, counties with higher prevalence or rates of birth defects have greater prevalence of agrochemicals in the water. And the highest or the strongest association we see in this area is where there are high concentrations of both nitrate and atrazine. But I also want to link water quantity with human health. And this is where climate change is related, especially. So if we think about precipitation extremes, both flooding and drought, these things are gonna become more common under a changing climate. Well, these things can impact our health. So let's start with flooding. Many of you might remember the floods from March 2019 all throughout Nebraska, the Missouri River Basin. Nebraska is one of the most flood-prone states in the United States. This particular flood led to $10.8 billion in economic loss, and it was the costliest inland flooding event in U.S. history. During that event, there were 4 deaths. Hundreds of people were displaced from their homes. At least 2 hospitals throughout the state sustained damage, and a dozen long-term care facilities had to be evacuated. So all of these people that were receiving care around the clock had to find new places to go. Another problem that Nebraska faced was a lack of access to care because of flooded roads and damaged infrastructure. So flooding can lead to a variety of health outcomes. Some of these things are related to drowning and motor vehicle accidents from flooded roads, post-event disease spread. So think about how, extra precipitation can lead to standing water, and therefore the vector or the mosquito habitats change. And so vector-borne diseases become common. People have to evacuate. Where do they go? They go to shelters. So when you're in a shelter surrounded by all these people, you're gonna have respiratory disease and enteric conditions. They also lead to food and waterborne disease. Limited access to medical care and needed medicine also is a problem after a flood event. Mental health impacts include stress, anxiety, and depression. And then finally, flooding has been shown to have impacts on preterm birth and low birth weight. On the other side of the problem is drought. It's also problematic for human health. So since 1980, we've had at least 29 drought events that caused at least $1 billion in damage. So that's not all the drought events. These are the costliest, the $1 billion disaster events. So combined, these events resulted in $285 billion worth of loss, and it's estimated that over 4,000 deaths have been associated with drought in the United States. Here is our current drought status. This is the most recent data that we have available from our U.S. Drought Monitor, and as you can see, the Midwest region that we are in right now is under exceptional drought in some places and extreme drought in a lot of places. So the orange, the red, and the brown colors. According to the U.S. Drought Monitor, currently 38% of the north central U.S. Is in drought, and 24% above that are abnormally dry. And it's really challenging to link drought to human health for many reasons. Drought can evolve slowly. It takes a long time to get to the point where we say we are in drought conditions. The impacts are not immediate. You know, it takes a long time for the impacts for our crops and our animals, but also for our health. And there can be multiple steps along the pathway that lead from drought exposure to health outcomes. Also, our current health surveillance systems are just not set up to monitor the impacts of drought on health. But we do know that there are many health outcomes with linkages to drought, and these are just some of the ones shown here. So here are some of the things we do know. So a recent study by our team demonstrated that there was an increased risk of death in times of worsening drought in Nebraska. So longer-term droughts are associated with heightened mortality rates among subpopulations in both metro and non-metro counties. We also know that drought that occurs during the growing season leads to stress and suicide in farmers who rely on the land and adequate rainfall for their livelihoods. And during moderate and severe drought exposure, respiratory-related mortality has increased in certain parts of the country, and this varies from about 3.5% in the southeast part of the country to up to 16% in the upper Midwest part of the country. So respiratory mortality is also linked with periods of drought. Excuse me. And then finally, there is this linkage between water quantity and water quality. When you have water quantity issues, you also are going to have water quality issues. There's this synergistic effect. So basically, during flooding events, we run into the risk of additional contamination to our water due to runoff and also sewage system overflows. And then during drought events, when our water levels are reduced, contamination levels increase. Both bacterial and chemical contamination can increase. So health effects then get more exacerbated, more complicated, and more difficult to link back to the cause. So I just want to close. There are a variety of factors or characteristics that we know can cause certain people or communities to be more impacted from these issues. These are related to age, health, resources, and exposure. So not surprising, infants, children, and older adults have more impact from these exposures. Certain health conditions and disabilities and even pregnancy can put you more at risk to bad outcomes from water quality and water quantity. Obviously, low resource, underhoused individuals have challenges, and then exposure. So people in agricultural occupations and indigenous communities who are tightly linked to their land are obviously affected more than others. So if you would like to get involved or learn more about what we do with the Water, Climate, and Health program at the University of Nebraska Medical Center, our information is there. But thank you very much for your time, and unless Renee tells me otherwise, I'm turning it over to Great Grandmother Mary Lyons. There you go.
So, thank you, Dr. Kintzinger. And this time, I'd like to introduce Great Grandmother Mary Lyons. And she's coming here from Minneapolis and that area, Twin Cities area. She's from the Ojibwe Nation. And she's also a Medewan Kwe, which is a Shao woman, as we would say here in Nebraska. And what I want to share about that is that I too am a Shao woman. I'm also Medewan. And this was something that my grandmother, May Blackbird Sans Souci, was a member of our Omaha Shao Society. And what happened, I'll give you a little bit of history, just so Great Grandmother Mary Lyons has that connection. Is that in the 50s, 1958 specifically, our tribe dismantled our medicine lodge, the Omaha Shao Society. And this was something that I undertook a journey in those years of 2007, 2008. I couldn't explain to my family or to my tribe what was happening to me. I was having an awakening and I had to follow the spirit. It took me north to Minnesota, to Wisconsin, in order to understand what happened. Because by that time, in those years, we had no more members of the Omaha Shelf Society alive. The last member, her name was Margaret Sans Souci, one of my relatives. But she was at that age and at that year, she was deaf and blind. And I couldn't do anything to go, even if I wanted to go and see her and try to talk to her, she couldn't hear me. And neither could she see, and it made things difficult. So I did follow my spirit, I was spirit-led, went to the Ojibwe people, and got this story actually in Wisconsin from the Le Coeur d'Oreille people. The person that told me this story is the late Eddie Benton Benet, Badwe done Benesi Iban. And he's now in the spirit world. But he shared this story that in 1958, he came down to the Omaha tribe, to our powwow, in fact, in August. And he was there singing with his brothers at our powwow. And during that time, he was approached by the Omaha tribal chairman, whose name was Buddy Gilpin. And Buddy then invited him and his brothers to come up in front of everybody at the powwow to introduce them to everybody there. So to shorten this story, they were invited to a Medewan Lodge ceremony that evening after the powwow. So they went. And as Eddie related to me, he said, we had received invitation, like a formal invitation from people from your tribe. And so we went. And we met with the Omaha Shelf Society at that time. He said what was happening was they were making a decision to put away everything that had to do with the medicine lodge, the Medewan lodge that we had. And he said, I'm going to tell you something. He said, this decision was made by the men. Your grandmothers cried. He said they cried for this way of life because they did not want to put it away. So for me, hearing that story, it was just like, I thought up until that point, until he shared that story with me, I thought I was going crazy. And to have that story told and to understand what happened, and I have to be honest, I was mad. I was mad at our Omaha men for years, believe me. And I was like, how dare they do that to us? Take away our altars, take away our drums, take away all our sacred items. How dare they? That's how I felt, really. And then I started to find healing and forgiveness and realize, this was part of colonization again, everything that was happening to us at that time. And instead, I focused on my journey. And in that way, I was able to attain what my grandmother had once had. Not everything, but I have that knowledge now. And I'm able to connect back to the Medewan Kwe, like my grandmother. So when I met Great Grandmother Mary Lyons, I guess you could say I fell in love with her. And it was like, wow, she's like my grandma. How my grandma was, what I remember. Because we used to be like, in my family, we used to all be whispering, we don't do this because grandma was a member of the Shelf Society. And so it was all like real secret or something. And then I realized, why did we do that? We didn't have to, but it was like something had happened. That's all I knew growing up. But when I got the story, and then I made those connections, and then I went through initiation, et cetera, and found my healing, This is what I carry now. And I made all those connections back to my tribe. Everything that I heard from my mother, the connections to the medicine dance, to how they had what they called the Medewiyans. I won't go too much into that, but just to say that this was the same as to what we had. And when I saw it, I went back and talked to my mom, and I said, Mom, I saw those dances that you described to us all our lives. I saw it. Now I know. I have a context. So in that sense, I wanted to share that journey with you and to understand why it was so important, you know, to invite Great Grandmother Mary Lyons here to Omaha, Nebraska, to speak about the water. Because as we know, the women are the water protectors. As you know, we carry life in water, we take care of the water. It's a spiritual purpose. And in balance, the men take care of the fire. So there's always a balance in everything. But I wanted to share that little story with Great Grandmother Mary Lyons to understand, you know, this is why I feel so strongly about all the work that she does, as well as her daughters, her family. And this inspires me and helps me to continue to do my own work. So, Wiblaha, Chimikwech.
So I think what we'll do is, why don't we all get the food? You have your food in front of you, and then I would like to show the documentary I'm very proud to be a part of. But before that, I just want to read a prayer of some of the 7 teachings that we were taught since the beginning of time. But before that, I want to do an exercise, Chiwi, which Renee and all that has invited us up here. I always travel with my family. We always come within generations. Because most people talk about 7 generations, but when you ask them who their great-grandparents were, they have no memory. So I'm very blessed. Within our protocol, I'm always addressed as great-grandmother because I earned that space. Because, see, I sat with my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother. And now today I sit with my daughter, my granddaughter, and my great-granddaughter. You see, the 7 generations to the Medewans is that we hold the balance, and that's why we honor it by saying by great-grandparents. Does that make sense? Especially to those little ones, it's really, really, really important that it makes sense. So we never talk about, you know, this is what I did. You know, I come from a lineage line that the knowledge that I carry forward is the knowledge of my ancestors. I can't say, I did this, I did that. We don't speak in the word of I as being that individual. We come as the we. So I want to do this exercise with you before we eat, and then I say this prayer. So I want you to close your eyes. Just close your eyes and just relax. You see, the thing is, you had this agreement with Creator before you came to this planet. You were this little spirit. And Creator said to you, he says, you're going to come as a student, walk as a student, and you'll return to us as a student. So that little spirit came down, swam in the oceans of all that water within the womb of its mother. And we all know, or at least the indigenous people knew, that everything carries memory, and that water carries memory. And being within that womb, it was like they were getting downloaded from these computers that you have in front of you. All that knowledge, all that history was being downloaded into that little spirit while the mother built that beautiful blanket of a body around that spirit, which we call a body. So then as time neared, you can open your eyes now. what they did was, when it was ready to enter this world, my next thing I want you to do is take a breath. Breathe in. And exhale. Air. That was the second element. That's that little spirit that was into a body named an infant, a baby, was aware of. Then they felt the warmth. They felt the warmth of the sun, the fire, the third element. And then they nourished, and they walked, and they received their home as Mother Earth. You see, everything within this planet has a relationship of the oneness. No one can escape it. Everybody has a history, everybody has a culture, everybody has this and everybody has that. Those are just written emotions that are attached to you while you're here. But we all know, we all have our different religions, we all have our different beliefs, which is beautiful, which next week I'll be speaking at the Parliament of the World Religions. And this will be the third parliament that the Indigenous people were invited at to speak. Because what most people don't know is that it wasn't until 1978 that the Indigenous people, the Native American people here within the United States of America, could practice our rights freely. Otherwise, we could have been imprisoned. In most places, we could have been killed because it was called witchery. So the thing is, when you think about moments like that, knowing that this little individual that comes as a student and is walking as a student, leaves as a student, we have these 7 teachings, and these 7 teachings I'm going to read. Chimigwich Manidu, we wash our hands in the sweet smoke so that we may become constructive and reach out to others in a good way. By continuing this practice, we bring forward the courage our ancestors left us. We bring the smoke over our heads and down our backs to lighten our troubles and bring clarity to our daily purpose. This is the honesty our ancestors entrusted with us. We smudge our eyes so we will see good things in all people and learn from them equally as well. For this we bring respect forward in a good way. We smudge our mouths so that we may speak good things to all people. May we continue to choose our words carefully, for this is the truth we were to abide by. We smudge our ears so that we will listen carefully to all people, learn from what they say and become someone they will want to talk to, as this is the passage from the beginning and to now and will lead us into the future, as this is wisdom that should never be lost. We bring the smoke towards each of us to surround our hearts so that what has been damaged will heal. We promise to grow in a good way and to be strong as we carry unconditional love forward. We wash our feet in the smoke so that we may walk a pathway full of purpose, compassion, balance, and kindness. As we carry what was taught to us throughout time and stand strong, we do it with humility. Creator, Gitchumanidu, let the smoke wash over each of us, collect all our messages of gratitude and gather our worries. Please let them rise up to the sky world. Please let our ancestors see that each of us on a moment-to-moment basis will act with good intentions. Let each of us be thankful for the waters that nourish us, the fires that keep us warm, the air that fills our blanket of the body with goodness, as we promise to keep our homelands of Mother Earth healthy. Miigwech, 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 miigwech. I say this prayer just about every place I go, and especially to remind those young ones, is because if we don't have those 7 practices, then we will be going into the dark area. There will be no such thing as 7 generations to even speak about. And we're in this plateau of untipping right now within this climate, and this is why this documentary that you'll all be witnessing is extremely important, because it's just not about Indigenous, it's not about a cultural group, it's not about certainties. This is about the oneness, and this is about our home planet Earth that we call Aki, means earth in my language. So I just want you right now, I want you to be real comfortable. I want you to enjoy the food. I don't know, maybe if we want to have the chef, Nabasa, come forward and tell us what she prepared for us, because I'm excited. I'm excited. So with that, we will have just a brief wrap up after when we eat. And I want you to watch this because I think this is going to be really important. And I hope we can dim the lights while this is on. All right, miigwech.
Widow Miigwech, great grandmother, for sharing that prayer with us. And I'll introduce the meal that we'll have this evening. My name is Nico Albert Williams. I'm a Cherokee Nation citizen from Oklahoma, and I'm the founder and executive director of a program called Burning Cedar Sovereign Wellness, which we'll talk more about tomorrow when we do a little lunch and learn. But I know we're all hungry, so I'll get into the meal. The meal starts out with a summer roasted tomato soup. It's got a little bit of roasted red pepper and alder smoked sea salt. And then there are some Pawnee blue corn grits. I can't remember if it was today or tomorrow that you all will be hearing from Deb Echohawk from the Pawnee tribe. She is was that today? Okay, so y'all are familiar with Deb. A lot of the foods that we're eating this evening, I just picked up yesterday on the Pawnee reservation from her. They were grown in the Pawnee garden, and so those grits are one of them. This is some Pawnee blue corn seasoned with some Sakari Farm cedar smoked salt. And then following that is some roasted vegetables seasoned with sumac and sea salt. And then there is a grilled trout, and that is seasoned with what we call, it's kind of our proprietary spice blend. We call it uteri, and that is the Cherokee word when we would say something's really tasty or really delicious, utet or uteri. And so it's a mixture of sumac, maple sugar, smoked salt, juniper, and spice bush berry, and that's the seasoning on the trout. And then for dessert, we've got more of Auntie Deb's pumpkin from the farm, and then mixed with some sweet potatoes, kind of like a sweet potato pie casserole type of dish, topped with some Oklahoma native pecans as well. And that's all sweetened just with maple sugar and a tiny touch of cayenne pepper, just to remind you that your mouth is awake. So, all right, I hope you all enjoy, and if you have any questions, we'll be right over here, and I look forward to speaking with you all too.
Which now means water is life. Water carries memory. It's a living being. The planet is running out of clean water. It's not that we don't have water somewhere, but we can throw it into the mismanaged homes water go bad.
You drink that glass of water, literally one rise to the hospital. It's one glass of water.
Paid for our water.
Our poison.
People just assume that once your water is ready, that someone out there is taking care of it.
In 2010, uncovered the resurgence of uranium mining in the Grand Canyon area.
I'm at the R21 uranium mine, and this is the uranium ore, which has been dug up from 400 meters underground.
One more. If you were in a high rise in downtown London, this would be a 120-story building. Equivalent, that's what you're going from the top of that building down to the bottom of that building.
So this is what we call a radiometric probe, and it directly reads out into the sample 308.
Is it like the Geiger counter?
Exactly, yeah.
went to the nearby Navajo Native American reservation, I saw a different side. People told me uranium mining had poisoned their drinking water. I met a sheep herder, Milton Yazi, and he showed me the old mine pit filled with rainwater, where he swam as a kid. Aged 50, he had been told he had not got long to live. Later on, I saw him coughing up blood. The next morning, I had an interview with a local woman. When she didn't turn up, I assumed she'd got a flat tire. But I later found out she had died that morning of cancer. This seemed like a big scandal, yet back at the BBC, I wasn't allowed to include anything about people getting ill. There wasn't enough evidence at the time to link the deaths to uranium contamination. As a journalist, this was so frustrating, as I knew there was more to say. I was crushed. I knew I had to return to America and give the story the time it needed to properly investigate. So I've come back out to Arizona. The Navajo reservation was heavily mined for uranium from the mid-1940s to the mid-80s for nuclear weapons. Cancer rates doubled from the 1970s to the 1990s.
What other possibilities does the future hold for the use of uranium?
The implication of the future of uranium is simply fantastic. And it's my guess that the minerals we extract from it will be the basis of our very life for a long, long time to come.
I'm meeting a young woman, Janine Yazi, who helped organize her community water testing.
I remember getting the text and the call, the results. There was uranium in Sanders School's water system. That one was 2 times the acceptable drinking water limits.
And you're now part of that never-ending struggle to prove that this was unjust, that our babies didn't deserve to be poisoned. And the last thing you want to know is that you were unable to protect your babies from something that you know is extremely harmful for them.
So what do you do when there's no water at school?
If I don't take a water bottle, there's no water in school.
Saying that the standards are 30 and yours 34.6. There's nothing you can really do if you have a compromised immune system, if you're an infant, pregnant, or elderly. You may have an increased risk, and you should seek advice from your health provider. But if you should drink this water or not.
We've gotten pretty much no assistance from any government agency. I said, why don't you have water trucks up here and live with it? Basically, is what I was told.
Janine, did you go to that school?
Yes, I went to both the Standard Elementary School and Leeds.
So you were drinking uranium contaminated water?
Yeah, and we didn't know that either. So all of us were severely exposed over a very long period of time. It's, considering the size of this issue, the fact that the school itself serves about 5 to 6 communities in the surrounding area, we don't have cancer screening.
What do you suspect might be to do with the contamination?
I definitely suspect the true truck uranium spill of 1979 was a major contributing factor.
What was the Church Rock uranium?
The Church Rock Dam released July 16th, 1979, remains the largest release of radioactive waste by volume in U.S. history. Right now, probably in terms of radioactivity release, it ranks 3rd behind Fukushima and Chernobyl. This is bad stuff. You don't want to be exposed to it. You don't want it to be released. That's why they put it in ponds behind dams. But that morning, the dam broke.
So that must be all radioactive.
The fluids went from the site northeast of Galvin, New Mexico, community Church Rock, about 75, 80 miles downstream.
The government said they couldn't assign responsibility, and that was it. It wasn't until a curious PhD student, 37 years later, decided to do some water testing that the truth was finally uncovered.
This is where the spill happened back in 79. This is where all the problem became for Sanders. The groundwater contamination.
But when he took his results to the authorities, he found out something chilling.
They knew all along that there was elevated uranium in the water system in Sanders, but nothing was done.
Sanders, like, undoubtedly has the highest concentration of those metals, but like we have no data to show why. And in this case, since we're taking gamma readings, it is showing that there is some sort of deposit of uranium. I mean, it's all this yellow stuff that seems to be making this pop out. I started to get really sick in college around 2005. They told me that I had ovarian cancer. I was extremely scared. But I kind of just resolved myself to die. I got treated using alternative medicine. Go back to a traditional diet, indigenous diets. It wasn't until I found out I was pregnant that I got really scared. They were going to do an ultrasound and find that I was never better, that I was worse. And they're like, oh, you have 2 spots on your ovaries. But that's not a big deal. Like, don't let it freak you out. I remember nearly falling out of that chair. It was real. It was real. I was going to be a mom. And have this miracle baby.
That's amazing that Janine recovered and went on to have children. And it seems plausible that she got ovarian cancer from drinking uranium-contaminated water. But I remain unsure if this could have been the origin of her illness. So I'm going to meet an expert who fed rats water with uranium at similar levels to that found on the reservation to see what she has to say.
Navajo, unfortunately, had a lot of exposure to uranium, both in their water and dust that was on the reservation. Our study was proof of principle that exposure to uranium in your drinking water might lead to gynecological problems, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, given some of the health problems that are well known on the reservation. Young girls, high school age girls, have hysterectomies and so forth. It makes you think, is there a link?
Great power and great crimes are inseparable. It is only those with great political, economic power who can, with a stroke of a pen or the utterance of an order, or even a knowing nod of its head, send thousands of people to their deaths or consign millions to lives of unrelenting want and misery. When economic and political powers pursue common interests, the potential for harm is magnified. These harmful collaborations are called state corporate crime. All American Indian tribes have and continue to experience extreme exploitation. Since the 1950s, multinational mining corporations went to the Navajo reservation to mine uranium, with the only customer being the United States government at the time.
Many of the Navajo men are employed in the uranium mines, where they are valued as conscientious workers. Day by day, they take their places in operating power machinery and numerous other jobs about the mines.
So this is a map of the Navajo Nation, and it spans Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado. And if you can see here, all these red dots, these are all the uranium mines. Am I afraid to be here?
Yes, I am. It's radioactive. But the point is that this is not the only abandoned uranium mine. There are 520 abandoned uranium mine sites, and with more than 1 mine at each site, there's something like 1,300 abandoned uranium mines on the Navajo reservation alone. That's not including piles like this one, which is just exposed and out blowing in the wind. Some of it has been covered with clean dirt, but a lot of it hasn't. I really want to meet someone from the uranium industry about this. Unfortunately, all the companies that operated here have closed, but the Uranium Producers Association is in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
The U.S. was the major producer of uranium in the 50s, 60s, 70s. There are several abandoned mines yellow cake. And it's called yellow cake because that's what it looks like.
Is yellow cake dangerous?
Not really. It's you know, like we mentioned, you could eat it. It doesn't really, we would advise you to do that, but it's not terribly dangerous. It's not very radioactive.
This place is the highest readings that I've got. I mean, I maxed out the Geiger counter at the highest reading possible.
You were reading 5,000. That's higher than the levels. Much higher. What I found that keeps me up at night is I found readings that were half of what you found in an unmarked uranium mine that was next to a grade school. And it's not just the external dose, which is what you measure. They'll be breathing in dust. They'll be getting it on their hands and swallowing it. And anything that's edible becomes radioactive.
24 hours spent at this site exposed me to the yearly maximum dose of a nuclear worker. This freaks me out. But imagine what it's like living here. And that's not all. The Bureau of Land Management and the Environmental Protection Agency say there's at least 15,000 abandoned uranium mines across the western United States. How radioactive they are, how they're impacting communities is not known. At least not publicly anyway. At the same time as residents in Sanders proved their water was contaminated, so did residents in Flint, Michigan, on the other side of the country.
This morning, a lead poisoning alert near a major American city. Residents in Flint, Michigan, under a state of emergency, being told, don't drink the water, don't even touch the water.
In Flint, the water is contaminated with lead after the city switched from a clean source to the Flint River and didn't treat the water properly. The river water was actually more corrosive and dissolved the lead pipes into the water. That's what people drank. I'm on my way to Flint to find out more, because this willful neglect that I see here on the Navajo Nation is so shocking to me. I want to know if it's because of racism against Indigenous Americans, which I feel must play a part, or if there's something more widespread going on.
Flint residents Kristina and Adam have agreed to meet me.
Many people have died from this freaking water. I mean, they're gonna charge us for it.
Funerals are cheaper than paying everyone back for everything they took.
Or treatment. Treatment's gonna cost more than it is to bury someone.
Adam used to earn good money as a millwright at the General Motors plant, but that life is gone now.
The toxins have attacked my central nervous system.
Yeah, you get the tremors though real bad.
It's a bad roller coaster ride. It's like,
What's going on with you right now?
it's like everything's tense. Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can I help at all?
Here. That's what my husband goes through all the time. That's why we don't go to all the meetings, because he's a wreck. Our doctor gave us a packet to get our will together. So, you know, we don't know if he's gonna die or not.
I've got brand new parts on these machines, like just fall apart, corrode, and then warp these engine blocks that they were cutting. So it's corroding the parts. They don't tell the public, hey, don't drink this water.
What did they tell the workers? The workers?
They shut off all the drinking fountains and plants. Yeah. Yeah, they have them all. Yeah, they have them all off. And they have these water jugs next to them. So you get water from these water jugs. Now, you couldn't use the plant's water to drink from the fountain.
Yeah, so they knew.
So they knew.
Mr. Murphy presented to my office on April of 2017. We did a number of different tests to actually prove that he
It's not so much that local officials aren't listening, but they were stripped of their powers. Flint was put under an austerity manager whose sole goal was to save money.
General Motors engine plant in Flint said, we have a problem. Since the switchover engine parts are rusting the fuel in the power factory, the emergency manager allowed General Motors to change back to the Detroit system. Yet, when the Flint City Council voted to return to the Detroit system, the emergency manager overruled that vote. Capital was protected and people were poisoned. Period.
Hi everybody, we are here to celebrate the life of Cheyenne Robertson. She's 30 years old today. She's truly missed. We doing what as a family is supposed to do. We keeping her name alive. Happy birthday to you. October 31st, 2015. My daughter, she wasn't feeling good and they told her she had pneumonia. Monday morning, we called 911 and she was unresponsive. They rushed her to McLaren, they was able to resuscitate her. Then she started seizing. She was having anywhere from 100 to like 150 seizures a day. And she was 28 years old. And that's when they found out it was the Legionnaire that opened the threshold for the season. And they couldn't stop the season because the Legionnaire was so far down.
We had recently done experiments that said if a city should ever do what Flint did, which is to stop adding corrosion control to their water, they would have a serious problem with the invasive bacteria called Legionella. So, who's responsible for the deaths? Interesting question.
We're gonna have to collect data ourselves. I kept all my water. Like this crap, I kept it all. I mean, we didn't drink it when it looked like that. We would let it run. Like they told us let it run and then boil it. And this one, I think it was out of a hot water tank. And like this one's had like slime in it.
There's got to be an explanation for this. This can't be so horrible. The government couldn't possibly be changing data. This doesn't make sense. Now when you're in my world of science and experiments and conclusions and you're still ignoring it, that was scary. When I got sick, I had to be in isolation because I had dysentery. It's so incredibly contagious. And then coming home, and I was afraid of my house. I washed my hands with antibacterial soap. What do I rinse my hands with? The medical side of Genesee County put a statement out saying, we recognize that there are certain populations, pregnant women, infants, elderly people with autoimmune diseases, should drink bottled water. But the state had extended an idea to the physicians in Flint that perhaps physicians could write prescriptions to people who need bottled water. And then with a prescription, somebody could go to one of these pods and get their bottled water. And the doctors found it ridiculous and said, absolutely not. And at this meeting that I was at, the representatives of the state were so incredibly disappointed with the physicians who weren't willing to work out an arrangement because, you know, there's so many people who are just taking this bottled water. Maybe they don't really actually deserve it.
Sometimes it smell like poop, or it would smell super poorly. People were taking their water down to the city council meeting, but the thing is those city council meetings, nobody had any power. So now we pay like the highest rates in the country for water, and now we can't use it. It's poison people, it's kill people. Some people, like, their water bills are more than their mortgage. They're paying $200 to $300 a month just in the water. In Michigan, if you don't have running water, your home can be condemned. They can remove your children, put them in foster care.
You're listening to Stateside. I'm Cynthia Kintzinger. It has been nearly 2 years now since the first indictments were handed down in the state's investigation into the Flint water crisis. 15 current and former state and city government officials were charged.
We're on the record with People versus Nicholas. My
period corrupt peace defendants kind of in office for probably approximately years. There were at least 4 charges being found over to circuit court for further proceedings. Again, involuntary manslaughter, count 1, involuntary manslaughter, count 2, misconduct in office, count 3, as well as the willful neglect of duty of office on count 4.
So, does this mean Flint residents will get justice?
It's quite challenging in a situation like this to prove cases against higher and higher up officials. Frankly, it's not unlike organized crime. In organized crime, you're typically able to catch the low-level people red-handed. They're the ones who do the dirty work. The higher-ups are usually by design insulated from the illegal actions that occur on the ground. Government and government decisions often result in people being polluted, poisoned, losing the quality of their life, and losing their life itself in a very harsh way. That's how our environmental law system works.
I've come back to see Janine because she's actually trying to get uranium banned in this county, and she's petitioning the town hall here. I'm pretty excited because she could really make a difference here.
Now, we know New Mexico State is looking to reopen uranium mining because they're currently considering legislation to classify nuclear energy as a renewable energy source. And we know that we will again be ground zero for the type of uranium operations that will be needed to support that type of industry. We implore you to at least reconsider the moratorium.
I've lived in New Mexico all of my life. I went to school at Los Alamos High School. I lived down in El Dorado. I used to play volleyball out of White Sands Missile Range. And I've built the tumors.
We live between 2 uranium mines and just like half a mile away from a uranium mill. Our younger generation, we're raising them up. And what are we teaching them? To destroy the land? To destroy this world?
I feel like you were voted in to represent us and to protect us. And if we contaminate the water, we're kind of done for.
I am for the moratorium. We've had people here from the state land office threatening to sue us if we pass a moratorium.
Unfortunately, our hands are tied.
Those are some really strong testimonies. But I can't believe that the local officials say they don't have any power to do anything about it, just like in Flint. I mean, here in the Southwest, they don't have an emergency manager to officially take away local authorities' powers, but it seems like business interests take priority again.
One of the things we recommended was that all the people who lived along the Parker River who may have been exposed to the tailing spill in '79, that there should be a registry set up, and so to examine their health over time. We were laughed at, we were ridiculed. There was this constant voice of industry and government and elected officials in state and federal government making excuses, denying effects, and turning the tables and accusing anyone who raised concerns of being American, commie, anti-nuclear zealots, things like that.
So do people of the reservation need to be worried about all this uranium contamination?
I think they should be worried about that and also be worried about the Colorado River, the state of the Colorado River, because I know Arizona, Nevada, and California use a lot of that water, like San Diego, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Tucson. So yeah, they should be worried about that. With the whole issue of climate change, less precipitation, there will be less rain, less snow, and if that happens, then the Colorado River will be reduced a lot. And when that happens, then the issue will be like concentration of uranium in the water. They should worry about that.
In both Sanders and Flint, residents got independent scientists to test their water, and in Flint, that was Mark Edwards of Virginia Tech University.
This first manifested itself in the other big water crisis in U.S. history, the Washington, D.C. land water crisis. I proved that the government's claim that no one got hurt from that unprecedented lead exposure was false, that in fact thousands of kids have been lead poisoned.
You admit here today that even after the whole world knew that Flint residents were exposed to unimaginable levels of lead, you did not declare a state of emergency until January 2016. Isn't that true?
I took immediate action. As soon as I learned there was a lead issue, we started issuing filters to people, doing water testing, doing blood testing.
Governor Snyder,
I wish more would have been done.
plausible deniability only works when it's plausible. And I've had about enough of your false contrition and your phony apologies. And there you are, dripping with guilt, withdrawing your paycheck, hiring lawyers at the expense of the people, and doing your dead level best to spread accountability to others. And you need to resign too, Governor Snyder. I yield back.
Is it not a crime to have known that the water was contaminated and that people were losing their hair and getting ill, saying they were getting ill?
That's not necessarily a criminal thing. What we might see come from this case are the shortcomings of the criminal system in achieving justice for the powerless against the powerful. The amount of pollution that is allowed under the environmental laws is determined through a methodology that begins fundamentally with valuing the human life in dollars. And if doing that math, the result is that the cost of preventing pollution is more than the system values the human life and the pollution is prevented. That's why the Safe Drinking Water Act allows municipalities to serve its residents water at 15 parts per billion lead, a level that no doctor would say is safe, and it does nothing to protect the most vulnerable, rather it sacrifices them. Children are undervalued because a child's life that's going to be lost in 20 years is worth far less than a life today.
What are you hoping for from this meeting?
Apparently they're supposedly supposed to tell us what they're going to do with our money. Money that's supposedly supposed to go to the infrastructure projects.
You can see that there's been a huge, from the upper hundreds, peak lead values were significantly less than that.
Not enough, man. Not enough. Shame on you guys. Shame on you. You're wasting our time and we're dying. People have died from this damn water, and all you guys can sit up there and just pretend like it's no big deal. You should be ashamed of yourself. This is what you're showing our kids. You guys can just say what you want to say, and everybody's just supposed to believe
You
your
get
facts.
paid for doing nothing!
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing!
I lost my job. But I'm waiting for my kids.
While Flint residents demand justice, an unprecedented movement for water has ignited in North Dakota. The Dakota Access Oil Pipeline is being built under Lake Oahe, America's fourth largest reservoir. But this is more than just another protest. Many people believe it's the fruition of a prophecy held by Indigenous people around the world, that a time will come when humanity is at a crossroads. One way is the path well trodden, materialism and the destruction of civilization. The other is protecting the earth, ushering in an age of unity. With the urgency of climate change, some 10,000 people from across the country and indeed the world have set up a ceremonial camp directly in the path of the pipeline. If they succeed, it will be a huge inspiration for other environmental movements, which really worries those in power.
We are on our way to Standing Rock Reservation to join the stand for protection of water against the Dakota Access Pipeline.
We look forward to
sign our own death sentence. Whatever they take to purify the water, purify the water, purify the water, all you're doing is chemical upon chemical upon chemical. This awakening of the 8 fires and what was written in the Birchbark Scrolls and of all the prophecies throughout, it is surfacing. And the bottom line to it is enough is enough. It's water.
We see the convergence of different nations dealing with these issues, and we're uniting, and that's the worst nightmare.
Just hearing about like your story like really early, I was like, I need to come here, just to put my body here, to be in solidarity with all of you. People are coming all over the country to come here to stand rock. Like I came here from Flint because transnational corporations are consolidating power and resources. Black, brown, and indigenous communities have always been the front lines and have always had like this landing for resource extraction.
And people need to wake up and recognize that every single community is becoming the front line against these industries as we're facing these stresses of climate change, as they're attempting the legacy of all types of fossil fuel extraction in water and soil pollution.
This is the new wardrobe for America. This is what freedom looks like in America. This is what protecting water looks like in America. As a nurse, this is a public health issue, and we need to stop this now. We let corporations become our government, and we let it happen. We keep them down. We're coming together. We're putting down our divisive differences, coming together under the cause of protecting water and feeding water to generations of children down the line.
So this is a rubber bullet. This is what they're shooting at the crowd. Go ahead and get hit with it, but I'm not grabbing my feet. It is completely hollow on the inside for extra pressure.
Tear gas, sound cue. Those are barely. I myself was a combat medic in the United States Army for 3 years, from 1987 to 1990.
I was shot by a beanbag type round. It's a sack, and what it contains are metal beads. And they put it in shotguns, they shoot it at non-violent protesters.
So I was shot in the back that Thursday also, went with that rubber bullet. But on Sunday, they added a new element to it, which was water cannon. And due to the freezing temperatures out there, we had over 100 mild to moderate hypothermia cases that we had to take care of. There was no call for that. They tried to lie and say that we started fires. The only fires we started was to stay warm. The theirs was shielded and controlled. The only one that was not under control was due to them throwing out the sea as canister and starting a grass fire. And it was our people that actually put that out. The sheriff's department, the governor, and everybody in between is being paid by big oil to do this. I mean, it all comes down to greed. It's a very simple thing. And we are here to fight even for them, for their drinking water, for their kids'
respect to the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline. Dakota Access Pipeline.
39 people were arrested and there wasn't any violence. That's a victory. Yeah.
What are you worried about with this?
Well, I'm worried about all the camps. Basically, it was a war against all the camps. Excessive use of force and an increase in militarization of the police. They're protecting private property rights over U.S. citizens and the indigenous people of this territory that should have protections under the Constitution and Bill of Rights, etc. But it's private property rights, it's corporation. And the history of the pipeline is that originally they were supposed to go through Bismarck, but the white community said no, and they came here, and they didn't care that the people here said no, that it was going to contaminate their drinking water and their sacred sites and burial sites. It's called civil disobedience, but they're standing in prayer, they're singing from the Jordan. What this says about the future, the right to public assembly, the right to free speech, the right to stand up for your beliefs, is frightening.
The camps were illegal and trespassing on private property.
Human rights groups called your policing methods excessive and indiscriminate.
None of that is true.
What would you care to elaborate? They were talking about the use of, for example, let's take the use of water cannon in sub-zero temperatures on people on November 20th, causing a number of hypothermia cases, which is potentially illegal.
We don't, for one thing, we don't have a water cannon. It's just a regular old fire hose, and the water was down there to put out fires that were started by the protesters, fires on the side and vehicle fires, that type of thing. And then the water basically was there for the protection of the officers because of burning logs being thrown at the officers. So it was another tool at that point that was put in use for another purpose. But in the end, water was sprayed in that area protecting the officers. They were warned to leave the area and it would have been over, but some chose not to do that.
We didn't need new leadership. I represent a new generation of leadership that looks at things from not only a cultural perspective.
Need money for PRC District 4.
I decided to run for the Public Regulation Commission because they're a body that regulates all the energy corporations in the state. I mean, we made the most out of our grassroots campaign and having just wonderful volunteers from all over the place, like make their own signs, like organize themselves, get the word out. And then 2 weeks before the election, $440,000 comes from one of the largest utilities in New Mexico that is regulated by the PRC to influence the race. You know, how can we fight against that? This is my first trip to the Great Lakes region, and it was important to come here and meet firsthand people who are fighting for the safety of their water.
Clean water. Now. Clean water. Now.
The key in all this has been making sure that the water is meeting all quality standards, which the latest results have been very good.
it was so difficult to read the stories about how they lied to you guys and how they poisoned you and how already your babies were seeing effects, because it was almost like a double blow, you know, like here we are fighting for so long, thinking that, oh, it's because we're needed, it's because we live in, like, we're isolated, we're rural, all these reasons why our stories aren't getting out, that we have to overcome, that's why we're not getting justice. And then to see it happen in a city affecting Black and white Americans who are doing everything that they're supposed to be doing according to this American dream and living in this society and propping it up, and they still do the same exact shit without caring. And it was devastating.
I'm really sorry that more people haven't woke up before, you know, now it happens to, I feel like Flint's getting a lot of, I don't even want to say it, but I feel like Flint gets a lot of headlines because there's a lot of white people speaking up. And I don't think that's right, but at least there is something happening. I just didn't know that this was going on underneath everything, and I just apologize for our lack of knowledge, and I'm grateful. I don't want anything to happen to my kids, but even though this happened to us, I'm kind of grateful it did, because it brought the situation to light. This was Declan's blood. The day he was born, my husband demanded that they test the cord blood for lead, so that way when he got home they couldn't say that it was because of our house. His lead level went from a 2 to a 3, even though he didn't touch the water, and I just breastfed him. So I'm imagining that there's no safe way for a mother to take care of her child in the city of Flint. I've literally been poisoning my own son for the last year and a half, and I just found that out, and then right when I found that out, I weaned him immediately.
All of the issues that we're dealing with, they are bringing the problems of the global south here. It's making us, in a way, one family, and building the water justice movement becomes more powerful when you understand that it's not just over there, no, it's right here. And as the planet's water sources deplete and are polluted, you know, we're going to segregate off into who can buy it, who can afford it, who can make decisions around it, and who's a victim. The United Nations says that within 15 years, the demand for water will outstrip supply by about 40%. So we just simply will not have water for everyone.
As we're in the Great Lakes area, we're visiting a new oil pipeline project in Wisconsin, inspired by Standing Rock. The pipeline is being built by Enbridge, who are also investors in the Dakota Access Pipeline. When it's finished, it will carry tar sands oil from Canada and connect to an older pipeline on the bottom of the Mackinac Straits, which is a volatile waterway that connects two of the Great Lakes. Now, the Great Lakes are a fifth of the world's fresh surface water, so it seems insane to have an aging oil pipeline sitting on the lake bank of such an important water source.
Frontlines are everywhere. Like, if you look deeply enough, like the water system near you is probably threatened by a similar dynamic between state and corporate entities, or it's already been impacting. When Kristina broke down, let me know how much she's been learning about what we as Indigenous peoples have been going through. That was really important and powerful for my own spirit. Because I saw a sister. And I want to fight just as hard for her babies. And I know she'll fight just as hard for mine. That's the community we need to develop. That's the community we need to let thrive. That's going to be our revolution.
In an interview with Enbridge a number of times, they never got any response. Ready to have your business card and maybe try and get a proper interview when you're prepared.
You know, I didn't bring a business card, but I can see them. I'm not sure the guy's name there.
Roll trucks.
This is my mugshot. I look like I'm about to cry, but it's really the look of shock and disbelief that I had been arrested, strip searched, and jailed before making bail the next day, all for doing my job as a journalist. I never did get that interview with Enbridge. In fact, they pressed charges against me and demanded $85,000 in restitution. Luckily, I had a good lawyer, and after 6 stressful months, the charges were finally dropped. Standing Rock was an inspiration, but it's still an uphill struggle for activists and scientists to bring change and make people realize that our very survival is at stake.
Creator, and who we are as a spirit, had this original agreement that we would treasure the 4 elements.
Mary Lyons, the Ojibwe elder who gave water ceremonies in Standing Rock, has invited me to a gathering of shamans.
When you ignore these 4 elements, you ignore yourself, and you ignore all your ancestors that rest in it.
Watching the ice sheet melt and hearing the sudden rumbles of huge shells of ice crash into the ever-growing river is sobering. Vanishing ice means less water for people and crops in the future, as well as the flooding of many coastal cities.
You and I, we have failed to be caretaker and custodian of Mother Earth. We believe those fossil fuel people, but you and I, we don't become rich. We make them very rich, and they are very, very rich. If people stop using them, they will change the policy. Now the people are ready to hear that they have a responsibility to change. Without hope, people will run out of water. People do not know how to use the water.
What is that?
All shamans, they are the guide for you to find the path which you are meant to walk. You have to walk your path all the way out, and at the end, you personally will go to yourself and realize your own beauty.
So you're saying that is the answer to our problems?
Yes.
Spiritual revolution.
Oh.
I think what the shaman means is that living in the rhythm of money and self-interest has hollowed out our humanity, leading us to destroy everything around us.
I think anybody that hears a politician say that they want to run a company like a business should look at Flint. Government is not there to make sure that shareholders get a maximum profit. Government is there to make sure that people's lives are protected.
We shouldn't be telling people that water is safe when it's not. That was the tragedy of Flint. That was the tragedy that's occurring too frequently all across the United States. Without water, there is no civilization as we know it.
Thank you, Grandpa. Thank you for standing up and telling us about
all living things are born in water. So it's our responsibility to step up and practice and exude our power to create the balance that needs to be put back in place.
And in the 7th generation prophecy, it talks about in the time of the 7th fire, there's going to be people that are going to rise up. Once people are awoken, we can't go back to sleep. It's the 8th fire.
When I started this journey, I wanted to find out more about water contamination on the Navajo Nation. But what I found is that it's happening in many places and is similarly being covered up. If this is happening in one of the world's richest democracies, imagine what's happening in other places. Access to clean drinking water is a looming global crisis, and none of us are immune. But what I found that gave me hope are communities coming together and helping one another. And what I realized is the journey that we all have to take is one inside ourselves to decide what kind of future do we want. Is it one of pollution and greed? Or is it one where we have clean drinking water and clean environment for all our future generations? The answers lie with all of us.
So I want to say to you, miigwech, for watching this. There was so much that was cut down, and you got to remember, we started this 2013 when we started talking, 2015. It says by the year 2025, and we're halfway through 2023, and you can look at the water crisis that's happening now. You can talk to just about any nurse that works in a school. She'll tell you the list is long about the children that are coming, what they need. You can talk to a lot of the morticians and this stuff, and they will tell you what their diagnosis, what they find in people that have no name and they're considered a John or Jane Doe, that will have a high list of just about everything you see within them that will weigh out the alcohol or the drug abuse that they may have died from. But within closing, I'd like to read one of our closings we always usually like to say is, it's kind of a reading from my grandfather, but I'd like to really hear the words to it. Our grandfather would tell our community that plenty is the richness for all. Without sharing, we would lose laughter and happiness. Our father would say, when we as original people surrender to a number, we will begin to lose our original commitment to this life. Our grandmothers would say, when you find yourself witnessing our people speaking with a split tongue, they will begin to vanish from our minds. Our mother would say, sometimes you will have to fight in another world that we are not a part of. To walk a mile in our shoes means that we will not put a price on water, fire, air, or earth. Our ancestors spoke of their gardens will weaken and we will become hungry. Our ancestors' thirst will become dry and our wells will begin to dry up. Our ancestors' breath will struggle to breathe as the winds will carry diseases. Our ancestors said our fires will rage throughout Mother Earth's homelands and all will feel the blisters of ignorance. The stories of times past, the memories of an organic pathway, will only fade if we choose to forget and abandon the rights of nature and humanity. We must always hold this memory as it was told to all the tribes of the world. The whispers of our ancestors will echo in the winds, and the memory of their teachings will come from protecting the rights of nature and continuing our responsibilities to care for our gardens. We all must rise up and speak with the ancestral voice. No, my life is not for sale. And we will continue to be the best caretakers of the lands we call home, Mother Earth. Those words have been spoken throughout time, because the prophecies are starting to unfold, not just within the Anishinaabe tribes, not within the Dakotas tribes, it's within all tribes throughout the world. And as far as I travel throughout the globe and sit with many of the people, not in hotels, but within their homelands, the elders whisper this: it is time, this is unfolding, and we must awaken the children, because right now what they're trying to do is make you lose the memory of what times past was. Because what you have to think about, this world for tens of thousands of years was organic only up to about 150 years ago. 100 years ago, maybe 110 years ago, we never had to pay for a water bill. We never had to pay for an electricity bill. We never had to pay for a gas bill. And if you think about the bills that we have, they said there would come a time when they would be degrading, and today would be known as prostituting these four elements, because now we have to pay for them. And we sell it freely, which Creator gave it to us freely in the beginning. So the prophecies are unfolding to each one of us, and we cannot keep paying money into the ignorance to have a better way of life, because this is what we're told. You see, we lived for tens of thousands of years not having toilet paper, right? When COVID happened, everybody screamed and got scared because Walmart and all the grocery stores, there was no food. But when you go into the areas where the indigenous people, and not just indigenous people, they're considered indigenous all over the world. Their grocery stores were the forests. Their waters were. They took care of what took care of them. And today we can no longer be ignorant. We can no longer be saying, you know, oh my gosh, I need these food stamps. You know, I need this and I need that. I need to stock up. I need to do this. I need to run to Sam's Club, because you know the Waltons are probably one of the wealthiest families in the pretty much in the world when it comes to the food base. Because we're totally convinced that we have to have these secondary commodity foods and this stuff that are pretty much killing us. Can you imagine those canned foods? When they're put in there, you know, it's moved from a huge base, no longer organic farmers and this stuff, that are commercialized, put in cans, put in trucks. They may sit within the heat, and they may sit in the cold, and they finally get to the grocery stores, and then they finally get to our tables. But can you imagine what that contamination with that can and with that food and all the other chemicals that are put in there, when all we have to do is go into our backyard, take our seeds, plant what we bought that we don't know what that traveled for, just because it was 79 cents a can. So we really have to wake up to what we're doing to this planet. And we can't say they're doing it. We have to be responsible enough to say we're doing it with them by the ignorance of what we choose to do, because we bought into the system. There's one simple thing that each one of you can do, and that's as simple as, like for me, some will say, oh geez, you know, let me get you a cup. No, I use my coffee cups. I had one coffee cup for 10 years, you know, and then I lost it in a cab, and I was devastated. I went my friend the coffee cup, but I got another one and replaced it. Within the indigenous world, especially with Medea, when we carry our own bags with our plates and this stuff in there, we don't use a lot of the stuff that's in here. So it's as simple as that, as being responsible. Take responsibility in your own home. Show your children how they can be responsible. And you know what? I think the cutest thing is that these children get to learn how to plant a little tree, a little flower and this stuff in those little bitty plastic cups. We even did that when we were younger. But take pride in that with them. Maybe even do something that during Mother's Day or just any other day of doing something where your hands are back in the earth. Create that relationship. You know, they say, you know, you can have many relationships, but it's the relatives that you seem to cling to and care for more. They're never ending. And so we're all relatives. We're relatives with everything in here. You have to remember that water, this world is made up mostly of water, but it's not drinkable water. And tomorrow morning when we have the water ceremony, we have to be mindful is that we're not praying for the water. We're going there to meet our relatives that live in the water. and we're going to be good relatives with them and join within those prayers. So I say to you, Miigwech, thank you for watching us, but you know, my dear, dear friend that was one of the world-known drone people that did a lot of the footage in that there, you know, passed away. And he passed away in a car accident. And it was funny, the day before, he filmed something that happened within his territories. And I think some of you know who I'm talking about. And after he put it on media and that there, it was funny. I talked to him 30 minutes before this happened because he was coming back up to line 3 when we were going towards line 5. And I got the message that he had passed. So you have to pay attention. You know, when you stand up for your rights here in America in this free land, you have to be very careful. You have to pay attention who's around you, because you don't know what type of war zone we're in. That Standing Rock, each one of you taxpayers probably paid more money for that than you did any other war outside our lands. You did not even see even 1/10 in this film here was very little than the military that they did bring there. The helicopters that sprayed, the water protectors that were there, today we still try to look for them and find them because we're really curious about their health. We brought in the United Nations, we brought in everybody to start looking and trying to see where they are. So you have to be extremely careful, and that's why we say, if you're in the movement, be careful. Don't depend on that bottle of water that they're giving you. Make sure you carry your own. It's even hard for this old lady. I don't drink any of this water, and if I do, I boil it. Because the information that's in my head and what was told for me since I was a little girl and how these properties are unfolding, I take pride because I want to make sure my great-granddaughter has to be able to tell my story to her great-granddaughter. And I hope she reaches the age that I do in being healthy. So I want to say to you, Miigwech, have a good evening. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Thank you.
So I know that everybody is all tired. We were going to show one more video, and it's not that long. It's about 10 minutes long or so. And I don't know, is that video ready to go? So what the video is about the Niskithe Prayer Camp. And last year we had dealt with a development in Lincoln, Nebraska. This development was right adjacent to a sweat lodge that had been in our community for the past 50 years. And what happened is that the Lincoln City Council approved this development and went ahead and leveled the whole area that was right there, right across from the sweat lodge. And in that video, you could see what was happening as myself and Kevin Aberesk and Aaron Poor were speaking. You could see the bulldozers clearing that hill. So this video that was made by ACLU, Rose Godinez over there, who's waving, she along with the ACLU, are representing us. And we've been fighting this now for a year. And believe me, you know, this amongst everything else that I do in trying to help.
There's one simple hearing hack anyone can use to improve their hearing almost overnight.
However,
did you know that hearing impairments have nothing to do with your ear?
What we do, you know, in protecting not only Mother Earth, but in protecting our spiritual ceremonies. And we've given testimonies, you know, after testimonies, and we've had many supporters. One of our main supporters is right here in the back, Dr. Lori Dance. I want to recognize her. She's waving right now. And many people who have stepped forward and helped us. So this way, we want to get out the word of what's happening. And for a lot of people, they don't quite understand. Of course, they don't know what we have seen, what we've experienced. And what it's about is, yes, we are still here. The city of Lincoln really had no idea that there were Native people even still existing in Lincoln, Nebraska. Okay, oh, there we go. So it's not long, so just bear with me.
Ionia. All my relations, how are you? My name is Renee Sans Souci, and I'm a member of the Omaha tribe of Nebraska. I've been living here in Lincoln, Nebraska for more than half my life. This area where Lincoln is currently, we call it Niskithe. And this is an area that was a commons for this region for a number of tribes, such as the Omaha tribe, the Oto, Missouri, the Jiweri, Utachi, as they call themselves. We shared this area that we have come to know over time immemorial is sacred to us.
Hi, my name is Kevin Nabaresk. I serve as managing editor for Indians.com, a Native American news website. I'm a co-leader for the Niskithe Prayer Camp. The city of Lincoln puts together a document every 10 years or so called the Comprehensive Plan. And the Comprehensive Plan is essentially a roadmap for progress within the city, where the city plans to build new housing, where it plans to put retail, where it plans to put sewers and things like that. When the developer decided to submit his plans for this project, it came as a big surprise to everybody. It was really shocking to think that a city would build such a development right in its backyard. I consider Wilderness Park the city of Lincoln's backyard.
Osio Nagada, Erin Poor, Dawado, Chi Jalagi. Hello everyone, my name is Erin Poor and I'm Cherokee, a citizen of Cherokee Nation. I am one of the co-organizers of Niskithe Prayer Camp, where we are today. We were informed about a year ago that this area would be changing. There would be a zone change, there would be an annexation, and there would be a dense housing development placed directly across the road from one of our most used and most historically significant sweat lodges in our community.
It's just not appropriate here. This is a place where people come to connect with nature. They come for the peace and the silence of this place and this serenity here and the spirituality that's here, here at this Niskithe site especially.
To us, this land is ancient. This is our relative. We've been here for thousands and thousands of years, so it's not new to us. I want people to understand that it's not something that's considered, primitive. This is what our European relatives often say. Oh, they think primitive. They're thinking, this way. They want to go backwards. And it's like, no, we don't want to go backwards. What we want to see is something for the future, for our children. And at the way we're going right now, the current lifestyle is unsustainable.
We have been engaged in this fight for over a year. We've been so fortunate to work with the ACLU of Nebraska and Big Fire Law and Policy to not only engage in, conversations and advocacy efforts, but also legal battles. Essentially, we're striving to hold the city accountable. Essentially squaring off with the city when the city again decided to take the tactic of exclusion, of silencing, of saying we don't have rights to particular state-mandated boards that are there to hear disputes such as this.
Do this week's 6
Second is technique to restore perfect eyesight from the comfort of home. Scientists from Harvard Stem Cell Institute.
We believe the city circumvented its own rules by allowing this development to happen at all. It circumvented its own policies that are meant to allow us greater access to nature, to recreational trails, and as well as just the ability to worship as we want to worship.
To us, the land is sacred again. This is how we engage with Mother Earth and all the relatives around us. They are part of us, just like we are part of them. Why would we hurt them? And if we needed them for food or for medicine, we always made our petitions, we made our offerings, and told them why we would be taking them. We need you for medicine, we need you for food, but in turn, we're going to continue to honor you, and we will make our offerings as such. And in that relationship, then it's one based on respect.
This development across the street is the exact opposite of that. It is going to take away the peace and the serenity of this place. The quiet of this place, the serenity of this place is so essential to our Niskithe. If you've ever been in a sweat lodge, you'll know that it's not the same if there's cars barreling by every few seconds, and it's not going to be the same if there are people, 2,000 people right outside the doors of that Niskithe, and it's really going to strip us of our ability to reconnect in a meaningful way, in a profound way to our Creator, to nature, all of these things.
There was no mention of a sweat lodge. Our elders were in the room. They were not acknowledged. Complete erasure. After near total exclusion from this process. Our community rallied and our legal team rallied, and together we've been on this journey for over a year, fighting for this land, fighting for our rights, and fighting for our ceremonial grounds to go on undisturbed.
So it's not just, like we are doing this just for whatever reasons. It's like we have very valid reasons in helping people to understand what we believe in and why we protect water and land in the way that we do. Because we're thinking of the future again. And it's not even just our own, it's everybody. Everybody's children are going to be facing all of these issues, these problems, difficulties, whatever you want to call them, at some point. We, us, as human beings, right now, we have that responsibility to change this. We have that responsibility to the next set of generations to make it so that they can live. That's why we do this work.
Where we strive to let the community know, but especially the city know, that we are here, that we exist, that we have rights, that we are strong as a community, and that we're not going anywhere.
So again, wish to thank. Again, we wish to thank the ACLU for their efforts, ongoing efforts, and support. And then, just in closing, I just wanted to share something, a message, that I lived with all my life was a message from our ancestor here. He's buried here at Fontanelle Forest. His name is Chief Big Elk. And he's one of my ancestors on my mother's side. But I grew up with the prophecies of the Omaha tribe and what he had said to the Omahas back in the times when, everything was changing, everything was happening to us. And what he told the people at that time was, you know, we're facing devastation, essentially. I'm paraphrasing everything he said. We're facing devastation, and you need to adapt. You need to adapt in order to survive this great flood that's coming from the East Coast, as he said. And he had been out to Washington, D.C. and saw all the changes there. The great flood being, of course, colonization. But in that message also, oftentimes this is what's left out of it. And this is the part I grew up with, was that he also reminded everybody, all the relatives at that time, all the ancestors, do not forget how to grow your own food, how to hunt, how to build your own homes, how to clean your water. Those messages are what, what were given to me, and that's what, when I grew up, I had this sense like, what they said in that message was that we were gonna go back to living the way we had once before. Because they said in his prophecy from that he gathered with all the people, the message was that this life way was unsustainable. It was not going to last, is what I was told as a child. Therefore, continue to learn how to survive as our ancestors had done. That's what I grew up, and that's why I felt this sense like, okay, what do I need to do to prepare myself, but also my children and grandchildren? And I did, I had this sense like, I don't even want to own a house. And I felt that all my life. I have no interest in owning a house because it's not going to last. So I focused on all of those things, and this is what I wanted to pass down to my children. But in turn is the message what I share with a lot of people, what my ancestor had told us. And this, forms the work that I do. I don't just do everything and, just like, like I said, kind of like without great thought. Our people were fasting people, and this too was a message that was told to me. So I took it seriously, and I did fast. I fasted year after year after year until I was able to gain a sense of myself and what my work was about. And I always let people know when they come and ask for help, I'm always helping them in the best way I can, not to control them, but to help them to understand their own paths. That's the messages that I feel that this summit is about. That each one of us have our own path, and how we fulfill that, in everything that you see and what you experience today. How we fulfill our own paths are exactly what this journey and this message is about. So all the films that you saw, everything that you heard today, please take that in your heart, your mind, reflect on it. When you come back tomorrow, we'll be all refreshed and go into the water ceremony and, start our day again. But thank you so much for your kind attention, and, really, it's so important and that you're here. Thank you. Umonhon.